You and I, we like to talk and we like to think. And we like to...
Does anyone think this is clever? Have you ever thought about...
Ever think about thinking? Like, so we've done a lot of that.
Hey, thanks for tuning in for the ReMinders podcast. So this episode is somewhat of a sequel, if you will, to the previous episode with Lucas and Steven. If you haven't seen that episode, highly recommend it. Honestly, it's probably my favorite episode of the podcast series so far. This is a good one too. Lucas spent the night that evening and we hung out like pretty much the rest of the night and the rest of the day, the next day, and we recorded this at some point that following day. So it's got a little bit of a afterglow, reflections on the previous 24 hours type of vibe to the conversation. What do we get into? Honestly, I have no idea. You're gonna have to listen. I'm gonna have to listen to remember. I don't remember, but it was a good one. Yeah, and just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying this podcast, a like on YouTube really does help a lot with the algorithm. Literally just shows that people are interested and it'll funnel it to more like-minded people. So if you're into these types of conversations, a like and a comment, and literally hit me up and let's chat about maybe getting you on the podcast and continuing the conversation in other arenas as well. Yeah, I think that about does it. So we got Lucas back on the podcast. Let's dive on in.
We've talked about many, many different things.
Yes, we have. It's been quite a weekend. Or by weekend, I mean
just
24 hours.
Yeah, one day. It got to points of late last night where I was either asking myself, wait, what are we talking about? Or like, where is this going?
I'm sure you were.
Yeah. I was like, where is this going? Or like, how is this connected? Or where is the connection? And I had to kind of like think of these different topics as separate things because I was asking myself, what do I want to talk about now? And I had no idea. I was like, what have we talked about, though?
A lot. I mean, for me, it's been just a continual stream of consciousness. I mean, we hit on so many things, and the talk with Steven, that went really out there. Oh, and then we were sort of processing, and I was thinking, like, did it go too out there? But you're helping me, like, just notice and, like, pull at the thread of, like, where are those impressions or thoughts coming from? Like, whose voice is that, you know? And we sort of, like, identified, like, yeah, just that level of ego that's just, like, you're too much.
Yeah.
People aren't going to accept you for who you are, that type of stuff. You know? And it's like, just be what you be.
For each person you ask, whose voice is that, you know? They're gonna maybe say it's represented by like an authority figure or something that like is in their life, means something to them, and they've kind of internalized it, or to the point where they're having this kind of voice talking to them. It doesn't sound like even like their own voice. It sounds like,
I think it's just king culture.
King?
Yeah. King culture, yeah.
What's that?
I don't know. It's just like a phrase that came to mind. You know, it's like we talked about like nature versus nurture. It's almost like Mother Earth versus king culture, you know, just this like the thought programmings of culture. You know, we all have like our own sort of experience and filter of that.
Gotcha.
You know, that like predominating narrative. You know what I mean? So it's a more disembodied, like more universal way of saying like what you're saying, just like the specific vessels that we get culture education through is our parents, our guardians, the school system, our peers, you know what I mean?
Our experiences, right?
That too. Yeah, for sure. The traumas and just what has happened that's building our expectation of what we expect reality to be at a certain point, you know what I mean? Like if I've been rejected in a certain way, like on a subconscious level, I may expect that that's what I deserve, or that's what I'm going to get is rejection, because that is what the past has shown me. So it's like, I think that's part of the function of ego, is that it's, and we were sort of defining ego last night and stuff too, but in terms of what you were saying, how did you put it? What was the opposite of self? You said self was like your body and your soul, and ego was your mind.
I understood self as an umbrella term for really everything that we are, and then ego was that psyche.
The psyche and the mind and everything like that. So what I was going to say is the function of that is to sort of orient us into like keeping us safe, you know? So it's like on a subconscious level, we're like, oh, okay, these things have happened. So in order to keep myself safe, I need to like avoid certain moments that past traumas may resurface.
The protection.
The protection mechanism.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that because I think that is a different part of the brain that kind of works in conjunction what would be just the ego.
Sure.
But that's, or because that's a part of how the ego does identify itself, or if by definition the ego is something larger, it could be all those components together into one experience. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's molding a certain way of it's molding a survivor. You know, if you survive trauma, your personality sort of molds to, in some way, trying to learn from it, but on a more basic level, like on a more primal level, not on a conscious level, and more like a instinctual level. So we sort of just try to avoid going into contexts that are similar to.
It's how we grow.
Yeah. But it's, I think there's a level of conscious growth that we can add to that. Because that's like sort of baseline instinctual. And a lot of times it keeps us in loops.
Yeah.
Because we're mistaking, like, you know, the classic example is like, you know, when we get triggered, we're mistaking like the fear of being eaten by a tiger with someone hurting our feelings or whatever it may be, or like reaching a moment of sadness or whatever, you know, the fight or flight type of moments that we find ourselves in. You know what I mean?
These are teachers for us.
Yeah, opportunities for sure.
Yeah, I think that change you're describing, to me, one word I'd really gravitate to is like learning and somehow adapting. Learning is just another word for it, maybe. But I don't know. When I teach with kids, like I just having that learning mindset, it's already kind of helpful for them to step back and, you know, help with their ego and their keeping their flare-ups in check or anything like that, or any kind of dissonance that they're experiencing. You know, having like a learning kind of mindset at least allows you to look at it and change it.
Growth mindset for sure. But you know, even that, like, that's another definition. We should probably define how we associate with that word, because to me, like, learning, I think of like school and like even, you know, what I've been getting at with like the quick reminders series that I'm doing, where I'm like trying to dig deeper on these like little bits of information that I'm getting from TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, how can we bring that into like learning it in the body, you know, that living wisdom. Because we can learn a bunch of stuff, right? A bunch of facts and ideas and information. We can learn it mentally, like the knowledge. But I feel like truly learning is like integrating that and implementing it into our lives. You know what I mean?
Okay, cool.
Applied knowledge.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Because otherwise, they can just sort of come in and out, you know? Oh, I learned something the other day. Oh, yeah, what'd you learn? I have no idea.
Right. Yeah.
Can't even repeat it.
What is the benefit? You're right. If that doesn't hold a kind of in this nature, anything good for people in our experiences, we're going to shed away with its uselessness. So that is interesting.
If we aren't immediately putting it into practice. And there's such an overload, overabundance of information that I feel like it's even harder for things to stick for us. And also just like with technology, with calculators as an example, like there's not a necessity to memorize how to do these mathematical processes or we're not dependent on facts. Exactly.
We're not dependent at all about that. And I think education's got that kind of confused on that, you know, but I also see that for true kind of learning, if I understand correctly, are you describing like when a lot happens on TikTok and like we learn a lot of different stuff?
Just that we have that much, access to basically an infinite amount of information.
Yeah.
Whether it's information about someone's day or facts and figures or, you know what I mean?
But what you're saying about like actually doing it, that's the process of learning. So like it makes sense that when we're just hearing it, not doing anything with it, we're never going to keep that information. But once we do like spend some time with it or somehow like use that, then you can concretize it better and spend more time with it and find more purpose with that too. Or maybe that's the purpose aspect of it anyways. It's like I'm already getting to do something with it. Like there's a utility to this. Like this is cool, awesome information. Like
I feel like that's what really motivates the that level of curiosity. You know, because in the school system, a lot of times we're sort of being force-fed information that we don't, on a body level, on an individual level, understand why this matters. You know, but if you immediately know, like, oh, I'm learning how to do this skill to do this thing that I need to do, you know? Like, if I'm learning how to change a part in a car or something, like, it has an immediate...
A YouTube video
reason for why I need to learn this.
A tutorial.
You know what I mean? That's a motivating factor. If we can see like what we would benefit from learning about the self or learning about presence practices and stuff like that, if we could see like, oh, that can actually change my life in a positive way, then don't you feel like there's more motivation and incentive to like, oh, that's a skill that I actually would benefit from learning. Yeah. Rather than it just being, oh yeah, I have some useless knowledge that, you know, you want to play trivia?
Yeah,
like,
right. I
got some facts.
Once a week, I'll be smarter than you.
It might pay for half of my bar tab one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you're preaching to the choir there because that's my big argument when it comes to schooling. It's like that's the only thing I can find that really matters is getting people to connect with that, because if we don't ask ourselves like what is a tutorial and such in the first place, then we're not even going to seek out the information that we want for ourselves. So I think it's a huge step to teaching our curiosity and teaching our place in the world is to how to discover that and how to be kind to ourselves in the whole thing and how to use support. It's a whole journey to kind of work together with and
I think part of it is discovering environments where we're really conducive to learning, like I was getting at. Like if there's an immediate need that needs to be fulfilled, then we'll learn the skill. But also like, you know, you and I feel like have been like schooling each other in a fun and beneficial way the last 24 hours, you know? Not in
what do you mean schooling?
Like with just teaching each other.
Oh yeah,
you know
schooling.
What I mean?
Yeah, gotcha.
Like not like not like schooling you. Like critiques, but it has been. There have been like some level of critiques where we're like speaking about our perceptions of each other and stuff, and like, yeah, man, I just want to thank you for that. Like that was honestly such an honor and blessing to be able to have the conversations we had last night or this morning.
Yeah, right now
in the wee hours of the AM, you know, like just that informal therapy.
Yeah,
literally,
talking about stuff. It's like when I have that late nights, like when I was a kid and you have a sleepover with someone and you're just talking like all night long and like getting it all out. Like that's healthy. I think that's my drive towards community is to create opportunities as such and to give each other support through hard times too. You know, those are two separate but really good reasons for getting a community together.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean we have to talk like that every night. It just means that you're there.
Yeah.
You're literally around because the way we live, no one's around. You know, in Cincinnati, I can't get around to whatever person would naturally come into my life and kind of support me in that way. But instead, it's made it just so much harder, and we just have to... I feel for myself, I feel like that's a whole barricade to really achieving that and really supporting the friends like the way I want to, you know?
Yeah, distance. Whether it's physical distance or emotional distance or whatever, you know, just the walls and space that we put between us and the people that we love and want to see shining.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And if I know that I've gone through countless days like wasted, you know, doing nothing and feeling bad about it and like struggling, I know like a lot of my friends have too. You know.
Yeah, true that.
I'm just kind of assuming, you know, I'm guessing that it's not just me kind of thing, because that would be kind of arrogant of myself to really think that no one else was
that
like
I'm so special that I'm the only one that's, you know,
I have it harder than anybody else. It doesn't mean it's not hard.
Yeah, it's not to diminish it.
No, but it just seems so. It's going to be standard then. It's an understood experience between people, and every time I talk about it or I hear someone talk about it, it's like. it's like, thank you. Like, I know, man. It's like, that's when it really hits that I'm like, oh, I'm not alone at all in any of this. I haven't met a person that hasn't been like affected since the pandemic, for one, to be like,
yeah, right.
That was the worst thing ever, you know?
I mean, it was definitely a leveler. Like, it leveled out a lot of otherwise discrepancies in like status or class or like, you know what I mean? Like different levels of issues. That was something that everyone dealt with.
Yeah.
Again, sure, on a spectrum of degree, you know? Certain people were affected more viscerally, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But it did affect everyone, at least on some level. So in that sense, you're right. We have this shared collective trauma. And I think that that's actually a gift because it is a catalyst to bring us together. Yeah. But yeah, it's wild times, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I feel encouraged. I feel like more than ever I'm seeing more and more signs that people are getting deeper in their understanding of themselves and of the world. I also see like the frustration and the growing pains in coming to those discoveries because there's usually an aspect of like wanting to impose our idea of what's right onto the world, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that can be done in a harmonious and fruitful way. But sometimes it seems like there's a frustration in that. And I think when we're trying to make change from a place of frustration, that can have dissonant, rippling effects.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what that helps me to think of there is I'm thinking of the fourth agreement where I'm like, we're always trying our best, though. I do see that concern for kind of like, which way are we taking it? Is it really going a good way? But then, you know, it must be that we're trying to take it the best way we can in that moment, whether it looks pretty bad in that moment. Like, just giving it effort in some way. Every time we do something, we're just giving it effort and we're trying.
Exactly. And even, you know, the experiences of dissonance, sometimes that's the greatest teacher too. So go through it.
Yeah.
Go through the shadow and come out the other side and be like, okay,
yeah,
I didn't act my best looking back, but I actually did in the moment. That was the capacity of the energy that I had in that moment. Those were the choices I made. They may have created, you know, dissonance rather than harmony or resonance, you know, but that's a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, if we're only ever in harmony, then we don't know that we're necessarily know. You know, it's through the contrast. That old
Some
cliche.
might argue that like that would be the only kind of catalyst for it.
Yeah,
I feel like you could
two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin. So it's going to teach you that initial lesson of harmony. However, I'm hesitant to say I'd be like generalizing it. You know, there could be harmonious moments that teach you harmony too. It's not all shadow.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was kind of like hesitating to finish that because it doesn't feel like a concrete.
Yeah. I can see
100%.
disagreement there. Some people might kind of visualize it like this or that.
Just both and, you know, it's not either or.
It's going to come out some product in some way, some newer version or new learning or understanding or more concretized, you know, neural pathway. But whether we kind of define that as shadow and such, I think it's just like depending on like you know, our emotional harmony and like the things we're going through, like we're gonna experience in a different palette, you know, whether it's more pleasing to us or not pleasing. It's still kind of the same teacher, same lesson. Yeah, and I like bringing into that conversation about the emotional because sometimes we have different conversations, one that's more thought thinking and one that's more feeling and kind of sitting into that.
The mental versus the visceral.
That's something in our conversation last night. I was like, I was just so dumbfounded by the concept of how different like feeling something and thinking is. It felt like completely different things. You know?
Yeah.
Would you kind of agree with that?
Well, it's something I spent a lot more time thinking about, I guess. So it wasn't a novel realization for me, but it's a big one. Because like I was telling you last night, you know, I have been so thoughtful and so mental in my life that I feel like I've gotten to, in some sense, like a boundary. Like I've gotten to kind of the edge of as far as I can go with knowledge. Is that I know that I need to be doing these physical things.
Gotcha.
But a lot of times I'm caught in the mental loop of thinking about feeling my feelings, thinking about what I need to be doing, not actually doing it. Not actually slowing down. Because we also talked about how like the mind is almost the furthest from source. You know, we were talking about the Enneagram and like the three triads of like the thinkers, the feelers, and the instinctual.
The gut.
The gut, the heart, the mind. And I feel like the gut is maybe like, whatever, I'm getting heady about it. Here I am getting heady about it again.
Hey, we're talking,
like,
man.
which one is the closest to source? They're all source. But I feel like, you know, mental energy is so ethereal. Like it's like the least real thing, you know? And in the moment to me is like God. That's the end all be all, is the moment.
Gotcha.
I feel like the moment takes all different forms, like we were talking about yesterday, like the molecules, you know, like almost like turning the cosmic channel of what experience are you tuned into. Like that's the molecules and matter formulating to a certain dream or reality right now. This is what the molecules are doing in our field, you know, that we're sharing right now. We're sharing this moment, you know.
Yeah.
To me, that's the end all be all. It's just the moment holds everything. It creates everything.
Interesting. So even though we like you and I, we like to talk and we like to think and we like to.
Does anyone think this is clever? Have you ever thought about?
Ever think about thinking like? So we've done a lot of that, but I would see that the value of being grounded or observing the nature in the molecules and the reality around us. But I still argue for some benefit in like talking about things and But
we experienced that last night for sure.
Yeah,
because not to cut you off, don't forget your train of thought, but it just reminded me of how we were talking about, like, you know, sometimes you're not about the dance, you're not about the singing the song. Sometimes you just literally need to talk something out.
Oh, right.
You know, like it's just that self-honesty, like what do we actually need? And it's like once we exhaust the mental stuff, then it's like I was saying, like I've gotten to the point of thinking where it's like I realize I know that I need to be more physical.
Some balance is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Some balance.
And centering, you know, for always up here. It's like we're ignoring like the center of the body, the center of the being.
For starters, you just tap into a little bit, not get overloaded, you know, and just kind of learn. And
to be fair, like I feel like I am one of the more grounded head cases out there. I've seen some real space cadets, you know. I don't feel like I'm on that level. You know, where I'm like lost in the sauce of the mental. You know, I feel like I'm fairly grounded. Like I've heard my mindfulness practices and stuff like that.
Are you describing like the really creative people that like have a very different kind of like imagination of reality, or
just people that are just like chronically ungrounded and just like which some people probably perceive me that way, you know, but it's like, well, I'm on the inside. Like I know that I also have my moments of center, and that's something that I know how to access, you know, like I know about practicing presence through the breath and through body awareness and mindfulness and stuff like that. I've just come across some people that just, I feel like they live in their head like on an even more intense degree than I do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I think it leads to less suffering. To be
if it's
so
unhealthy balance, if you're in unhealthy balance, then it's definitely gonna affect you and it'll show. And I don't know. I don't know what that comment's for. It doesn't matter if it shows or not. I just think, that can. Yeah. It's about finding that balance. You know, sometimes feeling those emotions, and I like thinking about the gut one too. Huh? Yeah, because that's the intuition. That's different than what you're going to process. Instinct.
I would say it's instinct. Maybe someone would correlate the two, but to me they're slightly different. Yeah,
I like it because that's something it doesn't come up in my thoughts as much, but thinking about my intuition or instinct. Like how to tap into that. I hear people doing that and I'm like, okay, why does that feel so different to me? It's almost imagine if I were so heady that I wouldn't be able to access my emotions. Like what is that to really like reach into there and kind of pull from there?
I think it's a physical thing. Like I think that I probably don't have the clearest like gut biome. You know what I mean? Like I think I'm a little distracted. I probably like have bad bacteria built up there.
You mean to say that it's due to the chemistry in your stomach,
like your
that's
stomach
affecting
has almost as many neurons as your brain, or something like that. It's like it's a remarkable amount. That's why it's called
neurons?
the second brain.
We got neurons in our stomach. This is news to me.
Fact check me, but look into it. There's definitely like a lot of intelligence in the stomach, and if we're just abusing the stomach the way I have for most of my life, I mean, I don't like eat a bunch of junk food, but I overeat, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
I used to be on the junk food. Like, at least I've dropped most of that, what I mean? But, just taking too much sugar, too much caffeine, too much this, that, and the other thing, acidity, all that's going to feed parasitic bacteria. It's kind of elementary to call it good and bad bacteria, but there's bacteria that's symbiotic with the human body, and there's bacteria that feeds off of it in a parasitic way. You know what I mean?
Wait, is it symbiotic or parasitic though? Because parasitic seem that, I think by definition, it's kind of like pulling away from, like, it's kind of dependent on, like, it kind of hurts the
exactly.
The
That'll be the parasitic.
Okay, because the symbiotic
bacteria.
means they're
symbiotic would be the good bacteria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we need like that's why antibiotics are a little bit dangerous, because they kill all of the bacteria, and we need some of that, like the gut flora.
The bullies, the bully bacteria, kicking they're the landlords of the place.
Something. You ever think about that? Like, did you ever see Osmosis Jones?
Oh, it's been years and years. Yeah,
I don't even think I saw the thing, but just the idea of it. I saw clips and stuff, but sometimes I'm just like astonished by that my body has all of these things happening in it that I'm not consciously even like aware of. And I definitely don't have to tell it to, I don't have to tell my heart to beat. I don't have to tell my cells to do stuff with mitochondria and cell walls and proteins. And,
you're thinking midichlorian, man.
I don't know what I'm thinking, dude.
Right, that's something you can think or feel
science
like that.
Stuff.
But there are some
isn't that
things,
crazy? You ever think about that? Like, your body is a whole organism, and like, I'm up here.
You can feel it though. There's some tools that should be considered, like massage or exercise. Kind of like when you get to that point where you learn something about the different part and is able to do that. It's like, oh, I did feel that. You kind of, it might be hard in a lot of different spots, but massage is good at that. That's another way to ground yourself, for sure. and it physically helps you like relax itself. So it's like, that's all it is.
Totally.
Because if we're not mindful of that, what our body's doing, it might be contracting, from discomfort and some of that shadow, and that's going to carry there, and it's going to be harder for yourself. And as I'm starting to kind of preach out a little bit, it's easier to let go than it is to hold on. It takes more energy to hold on than it is to let it go. And I'm like, okay, I want to try that more.
So with that known, what is it that keeps us? Like, I may recognize that that's true. Okay, it takes more energy to hold on.
Yeah.
But why so many times do we continue to hold on? It's like on a subconscious level where we don't feel safe to let go.
Yeah. I'm learning this and trying to discover more answers. If I had to kind of venture out and make a take on it, I would say that, like, fear and kind of shock or kind of thing, or some of these emotions too, like when you kind of get kind of like wound up, or stress or anxiety.
It can become a habit.
The habit,
It becomes a chemical habit.
Oh, I see. Because we're kind of concretizing certain neural pathways and such, and that's kind of holding us on to that. But the more we kind of like loosen up those extra pathways that are telling me to feel bad about myself for something XYZ,
to have the same cocktail of hormones as we did yesterday. That's the thing. So Joe Dispenza has a book called The Habit of Being You, I think. Something
cool,
close to that. And he's talking about just that we are, like, on a chemical level addicted to the cocktail of cortisol or whatever it is, or oxytocin or whatever,
to keep survival.
Exactly what I was talking about before. It's just like we're trying to keep ourselves like, oh, I guess you like being stressed. You've been stressed the last like 70 days. You took that one vacation. It seems like you like that, so we're gonna create more
doing
of that, more scenarios where you're gonna get that.
That's funny when you
It's a habit.
Make it sound like that voice. We're like, oh, it sounds like you like to be stressed. You know, what's wrong with me?
That's
Where
the
were
algorithm.
It's
That's
like,
the subconsciousness, man. That's the matrix. Like, however you want to look at it. Like, that's the programmer. It doesn't care. Like, that's why I don't super vibe with personifying God, especially gendering God and it being a he.
Hard to give an identity.
You know, like it's a Sky Daddy type of thing. Just doesn't really vibe with me.
Zeus, right?
Yeah. Or it's like if you appeal to, you know, Cosmic Daddy, he'll give you what you want. You know, that just, I don't think that's how it is. I don't think it's personal. I think it's an algorithm. Like we were talking about last night, it's a pattern.
Okay.
And and the pattern will give us what we put our attention into. Not necessarily what we want, but what we shine our attention and focus onto. You know, if I keep focusing about negative things about my life, I'm charging that. You know what I mean?
I think our
what was
brain,
the example we were using? Oh yeah, it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah. Our brain, how we visualize things. We have this power of imagination, as you're describing.
And then this is like the chemical representation of something similar, that process.
Whoa. What if you could code out the imagination? That'd be so crazy.
That's a trippy thought. I mean, I wouldn't know where to start coding out anything. Yeah. Well, I think that's, you know, when we talk about like the Fibonacci sequence and the phi ratio and pi as a number and entity or whatever, you know what I mean? Like these glimpses of coding the infinite. You know, I think that's sort of a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are mathematicians throughout the centuries that have been on the search for the master code, the one unifying math equation.
That's a lot of power, man.
And I think it's funny and part of the cosmic joke that we have not found that.
That'd be like creating life at that point.
Yeah,
we're asking ourselves
that's
yesterday,
the singularity. Yeah,
if we create a code for a human being, or if we make a video game, is it alive? Well, if that's what you're creating, you know, you're kind of like writing out the whole experience, you know.
Yeah.
And then you plug it into a GameCube, and then it just like creates another universe in there.
So I think this was after we finished the podcast yesterday, but then we took it to the level of like, okay, so I was saying that like it's not that like a character in a video game has its own independent consciousness. It's that we as the players of games fill the character with our consciousness.
Oh yeah.
So it's almost like we are the ghost that is playing this ego character that has its literal coded parameters. The you know what I mean?
Yes.
The character can't do something that it hasn't been programmed that it can do. But it's like we're its soul when we're playing the game.
Yeah, that's
you know?
an interesting view of our consciousness as we're playing, because I relate to understanding that if I'm playing a video game, I'm trying to be as much as I can that one figure, something that's controlling the direction of the game.
Yeah.
And many times it is like of another person or another being.
Yeah.
And our
avatar.
That's interesting. That's what we experience as we're playing video games a little bit. And how is it not like that? Because we get into the game. Like, I'm playing Rocket League, I am the car. I have to think like the car. I have to drive like a car.
You are driving the car. Exactly. If you just set the controller, then touch it.
Hit the boost button and just eject something out my asshole and launch myself through the air.
Yeah, and it's just fun to think about, like, zooming that out one more layer, one more dimension. Okay, so is there, like, a soul playing the experience of our lives?
Yeah.
You know, because just like when you turn off a game console and the game goes back to all zeros, right?
Yes.
It still exists. You can turn it back on. It can, you know what I mean? It exists in that frequency when you tune into it.
Yes.
But just like how we're experiencing this as we're experiencing it, but at some point we went to sleep last night. We're going to go to sleep tonight. You know, we turn off this version of existence, you know, for a while. And then the soul goes and has dreams, the astral body, you know,
out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that? Do you feel that viscerally, or does that feel heady? Does it sound heady?
I like thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for me, I would describe my experience as kind of being like that. Because I think that could be true. And I got nothing to suggest otherwise. But I kind of take the approach sometimes when I'm asking myself questions about my experience and my reality is like I was challenging yesterday on the podcast. I'm like, I would want someone to prove it to me, or I need to kind of prove it to myself before I say, "Oh, that's reality."
Totally, yeah.
And I like these are the fringes of our experience. These are the largest questions that we hold. I'm okay with the idea of not answering them.
Oh yeah.
And keep trying
100%.
because until I really find an answer, then I'm like, I don't see anything else really bettering that answer. Like, that seems to be my reality.
And I think that's true science, is assuming that we won't be able to know.
Yeah.
Assuming like I won't be able to find an answer for this necessarily, the one true answer. But then just like I was talking about with math equations, like we get little glimpses of mini answers. And it's like, and they build together and it's like, but like you're talking about the fringe experience, like the deepest whatever is like dreams. Like that's, no one can tell me that I had or did not have a dream. That's between me and me.
Yeah.
And I've had that experience. And this just feels like it's an actual explanation of like part of that process, not the ins and outs, not the details, but it's just, I mean, it's a metaphor.
Yeah,
it's a way of sort of understanding it, that like there is, when you described soul last night as body and spirit, that makes total sense to me, because the body to me is not just the physical body. The physical body is only one layer of the body. There's also the emotional body, the astral body, the higher up dimensional bodies that I can't even speak on because I'm not accessing them right now.
Yeah.
See that painting?
Yes. Yeah.
That's one of the bodies.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the etheric, energetic bodies. It's an Alex Gray painting called The Universal Mind Lattice.
Huh, cool.
Just looks like the toroidal field, right?
Like a mathematical.
Like an aura.
It seems like a graph like that to me.
That too, yeah. Yeah, it's got that like exponential curvature, like singularity type of vibe.
Oh, should be mindful of the time.
Yeah, what time are we looking at?
It is 4:35 right now.
All right, cool. Let's wrap. Cool. That was just a nice little quick one.
Yeah.
Anything you want to leave it off on? We gotta go make some music.
Yeah, let me think some, because all I think I would be doing is kind of recapping what has been said. But people can rewind if they want to.
Well, okay, so let's leave it on a question of like, from anything we just talked about in the last half hour, like, is there any of that we can bridge into action? Like, is there any way to ground that into a practical takeaway?
Help me out. Well, what are some things?
I think the only thing that's coming to mind is just encouraging, like, on the heady conversation, like, just have fun. Like, have fun dreaming, have fun being you. Like, I think the only thing I really get from that is that it's not that serious, that this life isn't as precious as we've made it out to be, so important. It is also infinitely precious because it is the current vessel of experiencing the moment, and there's nothing more precious than the moment. But precious also just kind of implies like a fragile, like it could be broken. You know what I mean? It's precious in that it's uniquely special and beautiful and graceful, and the mystery of being here is just I don't even have words to describe,
Yeah, absolutely.
how good it is. But, so on that level, it's just like, have fun. The other thing that like actually came to my mind was to just like practice vulnerability with people you love and just engage in that like informal therapy that I feel like we were in last night and I guess just continue to be in.
Talking about stuff.
Yeah, just talk about your stuff. Like,
getting real.
Get real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like sometimes that's how we find out how we feel is by talking about it.
Yeah, it helps because I think we're talking about finding balance in different, if I'm more heady or if I'm more heart or if I'm more gut or such and such, different ways to connect and heal each other like that. Conversation's good because like You know, like we can share, we can communicate. We're humans to kind of explain language and like so much learning. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to communicate to each other. Hey, man,
on that deep level,
feel more here, you know, kind of thing.
Right. I mean, we communicate physically through hugs and things like that, and like, you know, physical touch. Like there's communication that happens through that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the way that we bridge our ideas, and we can unify a vision into an action. Hey, let's build this house, but if we don't talk about it, you know, it's going to be your idea versus my idea. If we can't communicate, how are we going to collaborate on this together?
Yes.
What are our actions going to be? Let's talk about it. And then put it into the dance.
The dance. I like that.
Okay.
Cool.
Sweet. Love you, brother.
Yeah, love you too, man. It's nice talking.